The rain had been falling steadily for the past hour, drumming against the tall windows of the Riverside Inn in Burlington, Vermont. The kind of October rain that turns the fall foliage into watercolor paintings, blurring reds and golds across the glass. Sarah Mitchell stood in the hotel lobby, her suitcase at her feet, watching the droplets race down the pane. "Sarah, come on, we're already late for the reservation." Her husband Mark's voice cut through her thoughts. He was already halfway to the entrance, car keys jingling impatiently in his hand. This trip, their 10th wedding anniversary, was supposed to be a fresh start. A chance to reconnect after months of working late, eating dinner in silence, and sleeping on opposite sides of the bed. But Sarah couldn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the corner near the fireplace, where a medium-sized dog sat shivering on the marble floor. His coat was a muddy mix of brown and white, matted with rain. His ribs showed through his thin frame, but it was his eyes that held her, dark, pleading, and utterly exhausted. "Mark," she said softly, not turning around. "Look at that dog." Mark glanced over his shoulder, barely registering the animal. "What about it?" "He's alone. He looks hurt." "Sarah." Mark walked back toward her, his face tightening with the familiar expression she'd come to dread. The one that said, "Not now. Not this. It's probably a stray. The hotel will handle it. We have a 7:30 reservation at Le Champlain, and it's already 6:40. But it's just a dog. Leave him." The words landed like stones. Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. She looked at Mark, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. When had he become this person? When had compassion become an inconvenience? The dog whimpered, shifting his weight onto 3 legs. The fourth, his back left paw, was held slightly off the ground. "I'm going to talk to the front desk," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Jesus Christ, Sarah," Mark exhaled sharply. "Can we not do this right now?" But she was already walking toward the mahogany reception desk, where a young woman with auburn hair and a name tag reading Emma looked up with a practiced smile. "Hi, I'm so sorry to bother you," Sarah began, "but there's a dog over by the fireplace. He looks injured and he's been there for a while. Has anyone called animal control or—" Emma's smile faltered. "Oh yes, we've been trying to figure out what to do. He showed up about 2 hours ago. We called the local shelter, but they're closed until tomorrow morning because of the storm. The roads are getting bad." Sarah glanced back at the dog. He was watching her now, his head tilted slightly, as if he understood every word. "Can I?" Sarah hesitated. "Can I give him some water, maybe some food?" "Of course," Emma said, her expression softening. "Let me get you a bowl and some leftover chicken from the kitchen." "Honestly, thank you. I've been worried about him." Mark appeared at Sarah's elbow. "Babe, seriously, the restaurant. Mark, he's hurt. I can't just walk away." "You can, you're choosing not to." His jaw tightened. "This is exactly what you do. You get involved in things that aren't your problem, and then you expect me to just— He's a living creature." Sarah's voice rose, drawing the attention of an elderly couple checking in nearby. She lowered it immediately, heat flooding her cheeks. "He's suffering. How can you not see that?" "I see a stray dog in a hotel lobby and a wife who's more concerned about him than our anniversary dinner." The accusation stung. Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but Emma returned with a bowl of water and a plastic container of shredded chicken. "Here you go," she said quietly, clearly sensing the tension. Sarah took the items and walked over to the dog. She knelt slowly, not wanting to startle him. Up close, she could see the scars on his muzzle, the overgrown nails, the dried mud caked into his fur. But when she set the water down, he didn't lunge for it. Instead, he looked at her, waiting for permission. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're safe." The dog leaned forward and drank deeply, his tail giving a tentative wag. Sarah placed the chicken beside him, and he ate with surprising gentleness, as if he'd been trained once, long ago, before whatever happened to bring him here. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, expecting a text from her mother or a notification from work. But the screen showed an unknown number with a 514 area code, Montreal. She almost ignored it, but something made her swipe to answer. "Hello? Is this Sarah Mitchell?" A woman's voice, slightly accented, urgent. "Yes, who's—" "My name is Dr. Claire Beaumont. I'm a veterinarian in Montreal. I've been trying to reach you for the past 3 hours. Please don't hang up. This is about a dog." Sarah's heart lurched. She looked down at the animal beside her, now lying on his side, his breathing slowing as exhaustion took over. "What dog?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The one you're with right now, at the Riverside Inn in Burlington. His name is Cooper." The lobby seemed to tilt. Sarah gripped the edge of the armchair beside her. "How do you know?" "Because I've been tracking him for 3 days," Dr. Beaumont's voice cracked. "And if you leave him there, he's going to die." Sarah's hand trembled as she pressed the phone harder against her ear. Around her, the hotel lobby continued its quiet rhythm. Guests checking in, the crackle of the fireplace, the muted hum of a television in the corner. But all of it felt distant, as if she were underwater. "Who are you?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. "How do you know where I am?" "I know this sounds insane," Dr. Beaumont said quickly. "But please, just listen. Cooper has a microchip. It's registered under a family in Montreal, the Tremblays. 3 weeks ago, they were driving through Vermont on vacation when they stopped at a rest area off I-89. Cooper got out of the car, spooked by fireworks from a nearby festival. He ran into the woods. They searched for hours, but he was gone." Sarah looked down at the dog, Cooper, who was now watching her with those deep, knowing eyes. She could see it now, the remnants of a well-cared-for pet beneath the layers of dirt and exhaustion. The way he waited for permission before eating, the gentle wag of his tail. "Why are you calling me?" Sarah whispered, aware that Mark was pacing near the entrance, checking his watch with barely concealed irritation. "Because you're the first person who stopped." Dr. Beaumont's voice broke slightly. "I've been monitoring lost pet reports, social media posts, shelter intakes, everything. When the Riverside Inn's concierge posted on a local community page about a stray dog in their lobby 2 hours ago, I saw it. I called the hotel. The receptionist told me a woman matching your description was asking about him. I got your name from the guest registry." That's a lot of effort for a dog," Sarah said, though even as she spoke, she understood. She would have done the same. "Cooper isn't just any dog," Dr. Beaumont continued. "He belongs to a 12-year-old girl named Sophie Tremblay. She has severe anxiety and selective mutism. Cooper is her emotional support animal. Since he disappeared, she hasn't spoken a single word. Not to her parents, not to her therapist. She just sits in her room, waiting." Sarah's throat tightened. She thought of her own childhood, of the golden retriever named Bailey, who had been her only friend during the worst years of middle school. When Bailey died, something in Sarah had broken too. It had taken years to rebuild. "Where are they now?" Sarah asked. "The family?" "Montreal. They had to return home for work, but they've been driving down every weekend to search. They've posted flyers, hired a private tracker, contacted every shelter in a 50-mile radius." Dr. Beaumont paused. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need you to keep Cooper there. I'm driving down right now from Montreal. I'll be there in about 90 minutes. I have a medical kit, and I can treat his injuries. Then I'll take him home to Sophie." Sarah glanced toward Mark, who was now standing with his arms crossed, staring out at the rain. She could feel the weight of his frustration from across the room. I don't know if I can," Sarah admitted. "My husband and I, we're on a trip. We have plans." I understand, Dr. Beaumont said gently, but if you leave, the hotel will call animal control tomorrow morning. Cooper will be taken to a shelter. And given his condition, the injury, the malnourishment, the trauma, there's a good chance he won't be adopted. He'll be euthanized within 2 weeks. That's the reality. The words hit Sarah like a punch. She closed her eyes, feeling tears prick at the corners. She thought of Sophie Tremblay, sitting in silence, waiting for a dog who would never come home. "Please," Dr. Beaumont whispered, "I know I'm asking a lot, but you're the only person who stopped. You're the only one who saw him." Sarah opened her eyes and looked at Cooper. He had shifted closer to her, his head now resting gently against her knee. It was such a small gesture, but it felt like trust, like hope. "Okay," Sarah said quietly. "I'll stay." "Thank you," Dr. Beaumont breathed. "Thank you so much. I'll text you when I'm close. And Mrs. Mitchell?" "Yes? You're saving more than a dog. You're saving a little girl's voice." The line went dead. Sarah lowered the phone, staring at the screen as the weight of the decision settled over her. She stood slowly, her legs unsteady, and walked toward Mark. He saw her coming and straightened, his expression already defensive. "So, are we leaving or not?" "I need to stay," Sarah said. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. "A veterinarian is driving down from Montreal. The dog belongs to a family, a little girl who hasn't spoken since he disappeared." Mark stared at her as if she'd just announced she was joining a circus. "You're joking." "I'm not. Sarah, this is ridiculous." He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration boiling over. "You don't know these people. You don't owe them anything. We planned this trip for months. We're supposed to be reconnecting, and instead you're throwing it away for a random dog and some sob story from a stranger on the phone." "It's not a sob story," Sarah said, her voice hardening. "It's real. There's a 12-year-old girl who's suffering, and I can help. By doing what? Babysitting a stray for 2 hours? How does that fix anything in our marriage?" The question hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. Sarah felt something shift inside her, a crack widening into a chasm. "Maybe," she said slowly, "the problem isn't that I care too much. Maybe the problem is that you don't care enough." Mark's face flushed. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Sarah's voice trembled. "When was the last time you stopped for anyone? When was the last time you saw someone hurting and actually did something about it?" "I work 60 hours a week to give us the life we have," Mark shot back. "I don't have time to save every sad animal or person I come across. That's not how the real world works." "Then maybe," Sarah whispered, tears finally spilling over, "we're living in different worlds." Mark opened his mouth, then closed it. For a moment he looked lost, like he wanted to say something that would fix this, but couldn't find the words. Finally, he shook his head. "Fine, stay. I'm going to the restaurant." "Mark, I'll be back in a couple hours. Maybe by then you'll have figured out what's actually important." He turned and walked out into the rain, the door swinging shut behind him with a heavy thud. Sarah stood frozen, watching his silhouette disappear into the parking lot. Emma appeared at her side, holding a blanket. "Here," she said softly, "for Cooper, and are you okay?" Sarah wiped her eyes and nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. She took the blanket and walked back to the dog, who hadn't moved from his spot by the fireplace. She draped the blanket over him, and he sighed, a deep, weary sound that seemed to carry years of exhaustion. "We'll get you home," Sarah whispered, stroking his matted fur. "I promise." Her phone buzzed, a text from Dr. Beaumont. "On the road. Thank you for staying. You're a blessing." Sarah looked toward the windows, where the rain continued to fall in sheets. Somewhere out there, Mark was sitting alone in a restaurant, angry and confused. And here she was, sitting on a hotel floor with a dog she'd met an hour ago, waiting for a stranger. But for the first time in months, Sarah felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The minutes stretched into an hour. Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor beside Cooper, her back against the stone fireplace. The warmth seeped through her sweater, a small comfort against the chill of the evening. Cooper had fallen into a fitful sleep, his body twitching occasionally as if he were running through dreams or nightmares. Emma had brought Sarah a cup of chamomile tea and a sandwich she hadn't asked for. "You should eat something," the receptionist had said gently. "It's going to be a long night." Sarah had thanked her but barely touched the food. Her mind was spinning, replaying the argument with Mark over and over. Maybe the problem is that you don't care enough. Had she really said that? And worse, had she meant it? Her phone buzzed. A text from Mark, "At the restaurant, ordered for one. Let me know when you're done playing hero." Sarah stared at the message, her chest tightening. She wanted to be angry, to fire back with something cutting. But all she felt was sad. Sad that this was what they'd become. Two people who couldn't see the same world anymore. She set the phone face down on the floor and looked at Cooper. His breathing had steadied, but she could still see the pain in the way he held his injured leg, the tension in his shoulders even in sleep. "You've been through hell, haven't you?" she whispered. A voice from behind her made her jump. "We all have, in one way or another." Sarah turned to see an older man settling into one of the leather armchairs near the fireplace. He was in his 70s, with silver hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. He wore a wool sweater and carried a mug of what smelled like whiskey. "I'm sorry," Sarah said quickly. "Is the dog bothering you? I can—" "Not at all," the man said, waving a hand. "I've been watching you for the past hour. You've got a good heart. That's rare these days." Sarah managed a weak smile. "My husband doesn't think so." The man took a sip of his drink, considering her words. "The one who stormed out earlier?" Sarah nodded, embarrassed. "Marriage is a funny thing," the man said thoughtfully. "My wife and I were married for 43 years before she passed, and I'll tell you, we fought about the strangest things. Once, we didn't speak for 2 days because I wanted to adopt a cat and she didn't. Thought I was being impulsive." "Did you get the cat?" Sarah asked. "We did. Named him Trouble because that's what my wife said he'd be." The man chuckled. "Best decision we ever made. He lived to be 19. And you know what my wife said at the end? She said that cat taught her something important, that sometimes love means saying yes to things that scare you." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes again. "What if the person you love can't see that?" The man studied her for a long moment. "Then you have to decide if you can live with that. Or if you need to find someone who sees the world the way you do." He gestured to Cooper. "But something tells me you already know the answer." Before Sarah could respond, her phone lit up. A call from Dr. Beaumont. "Excuse me," Sarah said, standing quickly and stepping toward the windows for privacy. "Hello? Mrs. Mitchell, I'm about 20 minutes away." Dr. Beaumont's voice was tight with urgency. "How is Cooper?" "He's sleeping. He drank some water and ate a little chicken, but he's clearly exhausted. His back leg is still bothering him." "That's good. The fact that he's eating and drinking is a positive sign. When I get there, I'll do a full examination. I've already contacted the Tremblays. They're over the moon. Mrs. Tremblay is crying so hard she can barely speak." Sarah's throat tightened. "What about Sophie?" Dr. Beaumont was quiet for a moment. "She doesn't know yet. Her parents don't want to tell her until Cooper is safely home. They've had too many false leads, and each one broke her a little more." Sarah looked back at Cooper, still curled under the blanket. "Will he be okay? For the drive, I mean. If he's injured, I've got everything I need in my van. Pain medication, antibiotics, a travel crate with soft bedding. He'll be safe, I promise." "Okay," Sarah said softly. "We'll be here." She ended the call and returned to Cooper, sinking back down beside him. The older man had gone, leaving his empty mug on the side table. Sarah wondered if he'd been real or just a figment of her exhausted mind, a whisper of wisdom when she needed it most. The front door of the hotel burst open and Sarah's heart leapt. But it wasn't Dr. Beaumont. It was Mark. He was soaked from the rain, his hair plastered to his forehead, his dress shirt clinging to his chest. He stood in the doorway, breathing hard, and for a moment they just stared at each other. "I left the restaurant," he said finally. "Why?" Mark crossed the lobby slowly, his shoes squelching with each step. He stopped a few feet from her, his hands shoved in his pockets. "Because I sat there for 30 minutes and all I could think about was you and that damn dog." Sarah didn't know what to say. "I was angry," Mark continued, his voice rough. "I thought you were being irrational, that you were throwing away our anniversary for something that didn't matter, but then I realized—" He stopped, his jaw working. "It does matter. To you. And that should matter to me." Sarah felt something crack open in her chest. "Mark, I don't understand it," he admitted. "I don't understand why you can't just walk away from things like this. But I'm starting to think that's my problem, not yours." He sank down beside her, his wet clothes leaving a puddle on the marble floor. Cooper stirred, lifting his head to look at Mark with wary eyes. "Hey, buddy," Mark said softly. He reached out slowly, letting Cooper sniff his hand. After a moment, the dog's tail gave a tentative wag. Sarah watched, her heart in her throat. "You didn't have to come back." "Yes, I did." Mark looked at her, and for the first time in months, she saw the man she'd married, the one who had proposed to her on a rainy beach in Oregon, who had stayed up all night with her when her father died, who had once believed in beautiful, impractical things. Because if I'd stayed at that restaurant eating my expensive meal alone, I would have hated myself, and I would have lost you, really lost you. "You haven't lost me," Sarah whispered. "Haven't I?" Mark's voice broke. "Sarah, when was the last time we really talked? When was the last time we chose each other over work or plans or convenience? We've been sleepwalking through this marriage, and I didn't even realize it until tonight." Sarah reached for his hand. His fingers were cold and damp, but they closed around hers tightly. "I don't want to lose you," Mark said. "I don't want to become the kind of man who walks past suffering because it's inconvenient. I don't want to be the villain in our story." "You're not a villain," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "You're just scared. We both are." "Of what?" "Of becoming people we don't recognize. Of waking up one day and realizing we've built a life that doesn't mean anything." Mark pulled her close, and she collapsed against his chest, sobbing. Cooper, sensing the emotion, crawled forward and rested his head on Sarah's lap, completing the circle. They sat like that for a long time, two people and a broken dog, holding each other in the warm glow of a hotel fireplace while the rain fell outside. When Sarah's phone buzzed again, it was a text from Dr. Beaumont. "Pulling into the parking lot now." Sarah took a shaky breath and looked at Mark. "Are you ready?" He nodded. "Let's bring him home." Dr. Claire Beaumont was not what Sarah had expected. She had imagined someone older, clinical, detached. But the woman who burst through the hotel doors was in her mid-30s, with wild dark curls escaping from a ponytail and fierce determination in her hazel eyes. She carried a large duffel bag over one shoulder and a portable kennel in the other hand. "Where is he?" she asked breathlessly, scanning the lobby. "Over here," Sarah called, standing up from her spot by the fireplace. Dr. Beaumont crossed the space in quick strides, dropping to her knees beside Cooper. Her entire demeanor shifted instantly, from frantic urgency to gentle calm. She set down her equipment and extended her hand slowly, letting Cooper sniff it. "Hey there, brave boy," she murmured in French-accented English. "Tout est en sécurité maintenant. You're safe now." Cooper's tail wagged weakly. Dr. Beaumont's eyes welled with tears. Mon Dieu, it's really him. I was so afraid. She looked up at Sarah. Thank you for staying. Of course, Sarah said, her voice thick. Mark stood behind her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Dr. Beaumont glanced between them, taking in their red eyes and rumpled appearance. This wasn't easy for you, was it? She asked softly. Sarah and Mark exchanged a look. No, Sarah admitted, but it was necessary. Dr. Beaumont nodded, understanding more than was said. She opened her duffel and pulled out a stethoscope, a penlight, and various medical supplies. I need to examine him. It'll take about 15 minutes. Would you mind staying? He seems to trust you. We're not going anywhere, Mark said firmly. For the next quarter hour, Sarah and Mark watched as Dr. Beaumont worked with practiced efficiency. She checked Cooper's vitals, examined his injured paw, a deep cut that had become infected but was treatable, looked at his teeth, felt along his ribs and spine. Cooper remained remarkably still throughout, occasionally glancing at Sarah as if seeking reassurance. He's malnourished and dehydrated, Doctor, Beaumont said finally, sitting back on her heels. The paw infection is concerning, but I can treat it with antibiotics and wound care. He has some cuts and scrapes, probably from running through the woods, but nothing that won't heal. Emotionally, she stroked Cooper's head gently. He's traumatized. It'll take time, but dogs are resilient, especially when they're going home to people who love them. She pulled out her phone and showed them a photo. A young girl with dark hair and serious brown eyes sat on a porch step, her arms wrapped around a healthier, happier version of Cooper. The resemblance was unmistakable. That's Sophie, Dr. Beaumont said, taken 2 months before Cooper disappeared. She's 12 now, but in this photo she looks younger, lighter. Since Cooper left, she's stopped smiling, stopped talking. Her parents are terrified they've lost both of them. Sarah's chest ached. She thought about that version of herself at 12, lonely, anxious, dependent on Bailey for comfort. What happened to her? Why doesn't she speak? Dr. Beaumont sighed. Sophie has always been shy, but after a bullying incident at school last year, she developed selective mutism. She could talk at home, with her parents and Cooper, but nowhere else. Then Cooper disappeared, and... She shook her head. It's like she closed the last door. Her therapist says she's waiting. She won't move forward until Cooper comes back. Then let's make sure he does, Mark said quietly. Dr. Beaumont looked up at him, surprised. You're coming? We are, Sarah said before Mark could respond. She looked at her husband. Aren't we? Mark met her gaze, and something passed between them, an understanding, a commitment. Yeah, we are. It's a 2-hour drive to Montreal in this weather, Dr. Beaumont warned. Maybe more, and it's already past 9. We'll follow you, Sarah said. We can help carry things, or just be there in case you need anything. Dr. Beaumont's eyes filled with tears again. She reached out and squeezed Sarah's hand. You are remarkable people, both of you. The drive north through Vermont into Quebec was slow and treacherous. The rain had intensified, turning I-89 into a river of red taillights and blurred yellow lines. Dr. Beaumont drove ahead in a white van with veterinary decals on the sides. Sarah and Mark followed in their rental car, the GPS estimating arrival at 11:47 p.m. They drove in silence for the first 20 minutes. Then Mark spoke. I cancelled the reservation, he said, at Le Champlain. I know. We were supposed to have champagne, lobster, some fancy dessert I can't pronounce. I know, Sarah said again, softer this time. Mark glanced at her. I'm not mad about it. You're not? No. He reached across the center console and took her hand. I'm actually relieved. I think I've been dreading this trip for weeks. Sarah turned to look at him, surprised. Why? Because I knew we needed it. I knew we were falling apart, but I didn't know how to fix it. He squeezed her fingers. I thought if we just went through the motions, nice hotel, fancy dinners, weekend in the mountains, we'd magically feel connected again. But that's not how it works, is it? No, Sarah whispered. It's not. You were right earlier. I have stopped seeing people. Somewhere along the way, I decided that caring too much was a weakness, that being practical and efficient was more important than being kind. He swallowed hard. But tonight, watching you with that dog, listening to you defend him, even when I was being a complete ass, I realized something. What? That the woman I fell in love with is still there, and if I'm not careful, I'm going to lose her. Not because she'll leave, but because I'll have made her into someone she's not. Sarah felt tears slip down her cheeks. I'm not perfect, Mark. I do get too involved sometimes. I do care about things that maybe don't matter in the grand scheme. They matter, Mark interrupted. That's what I'm trying to say. They matter because they matter to you, and you matter to me more than any job or schedule or plan. He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. I'm sorry I forgot that. I'm sorry too, Sarah said. I've been so focused on what you weren't doing that I stopped seeing what you were doing. The way you work so hard for us. The way you always make sure I have coffee in the morning. The way you still leave me little notes in my lunch, even when we're fighting. Mark laughed softly. You noticed those? Of course I noticed. They drove on through the rain, their hands clasped between them. The rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers was almost hypnotic. Slowly, the tension that had been coiled in Sarah's chest for months began to unwind. Do you think she'll talk? Mark asked after a while. Sophie, when she sees Cooper. I hope so, Sarah said. But even if she doesn't right away, I think it'll help. Sometimes just knowing that someone came back for you is enough. Mark glanced at her, understanding the deeper meaning. Is that what you needed, for me to come back? Maybe, Sarah admitted. But more than that, I needed you to see me. The real me, not the person you think I should be. I do see you, Mark said firmly. And Sarah, you're extraordinary. Don't ever let me make you feel otherwise. They crossed the border into Quebec just after 11. The rain had lightened to a steady drizzle, and the city lights of Montreal glowed in the distance. Dr. Beaumont's van exited onto Boulevard Saint-Laurent, winding through residential streets lined with brick row houses and maple trees shedding their last autumn leaves. Finally, they pulled up to a modest two-story home with blue shutters and a small front garden. The porch light was on, and through the window, Sarah could see figures moving inside. Dr. Beaumont parked and got out quickly, moving to the back of her van. Sarah and Mark followed, their shoes crunching on wet gravel. They're waiting, Dr. Beaumont said, her voice shaking slightly. I texted Mrs. Tremblay when we crossed the border. She's not telling Sophie until we're inside. She wants it to be a surprise. She opened the back of the van, and there was Cooper, curled in his travel crate with a blanket and a bowl of water. He lifted his head when he saw them, his tail thumping against the side of the crate. Ready, boy? Dr. Beaumont whispered. She opened the crate, and Cooper limped out slowly, still favoring his injured paw. But his eyes were brighter now, alert, and as he looked toward the house, something in his body language changed. His ears perked forward. His tail began to wag harder. He knew. Somehow he knew. The front door opened, and a woman in her 40s stepped onto the porch. She had the same dark hair as Sophie, streaked with grey, and her face was puffy from crying. Behind her stood a man, tall, broad-shouldered, with worried eyes. Claire, the woman, Mrs. Tremblay, choked out. Is it really him? See for yourself, Isabel, Dr. Beaumont said, her voice breaking. Cooper took a tentative step forward. Then another. And then, despite his injured paw, despite 3 weeks of terror and pain and loneliness, he broke into an uneven run. Mrs. Tremblay sank to her knees on the porch, sobbing as Cooper reached her and collapsed into her arms. Mon Dieu, Cooper, tu es revenu, she wept, burying her face in his matted fur. You came back. Mr. Tremblay knelt beside them, his own tears flowing freely. We thought we'd lost you, boy. We thought you were gone. Sarah stood frozen, Mark's arm around her waist, watching the reunion. She could barely breathe through the emotion lodged in her throat. Where's Sophie? Dr. Beaumont asked gently. Mrs. Tremblay looked up, her face streaked with tears. Upstairs, in her room. She doesn't know yet. I wanted to make sure. Her voice broke. I couldn't tell her again that it wasn't him. Not after the last time. Dr. Beaumont nodded. Do you want us to bring him up? Mrs. Tremblay shook her head. No, let me go get her. She needs to see this. She stood, reluctantly releasing Cooper, and turned to Sarah and Mark for the first time. You're the people who found him. Sarah found him, Mark corrected. I came around eventually. Mrs. Tremblay crossed the distance between them and pulled Sarah into a fierce hug. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for seeing him. Thank you for caring. Thank you for bringing him home. Sarah hugged her back, tears streaming down her face. I couldn't do anything else. Mrs. Tremblay pulled away and looked at both of them. Please come inside. You've driven all this way. Let Sophie meet you. Let her know that there are still good people in the world. They followed the family into a warm, cozy living room filled with family photos and a well-worn couch. Cooper limped beside Mrs. Tremblay, refusing to leave her side even for a moment. His tail hadn't stopped wagging. I'll be right back, Mrs. Tremblay said, her voice trembling. She looked at her husband. Philippe, stay with them. I need to do this alone. Mr. Tremblay nodded, wiping his eyes. He gestured for everyone to sit, but no one did. They all stood in tense silence, listening to Mrs. Tremblay's footsteps climbing the stairs. Cooper's ears swiveled toward the sound, his entire body rigid with attention. Upstairs, they could hear a door opening. Mrs. Tremblay's muffled voice. Sophie, chérie, can you come downstairs for a moment? There's someone I need you to see. Silence. Then the creak of a bed frame. Slow footsteps. Sarah gripped Mark's hand so tightly, her knuckles turned white. Dr. Beaumont had her hand pressed over her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. Sophie appeared at the top of the stairs. She was small for 12, thin and pale, wearing oversized pajamas with cartoon moons on them. Her dark hair hung limp around her face, and her eyes, those same serious brown eyes from the photo, were hollow, empty. She descended the stairs mechanically, one hand trailing along the banister, not looking at anyone. When she reached the bottom step and turned toward the living room, she froze. Cooper saw her. The sound that came from him was something between a whimper and a cry, pure, desperate joy. He lunged forward, forgetting his injured paw, nearly falling in his haste to reach her. Sophie's eyes went wide. Her mouth opened. Her hand flew to her chest. Cooper? The word was barely a whisper, cracked and uncertain, as if she'd forgotten how her own voice sounded. Cooper reached her and jumped up, his front paws on her chest, nearly knocking her over. He licked her face frantically, whining and crying, his tail a blur of motion, and Sophie broke. She collapsed to her knees, wrapping her arms around Cooper's neck, and sobbed, deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from somewhere ancient and wounded. Cooper, 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 she chanted, her face buried in his fur. You came back. You came back. I thought you were dead. I thought I'd never see you again. I thought... Her words dissolved into incoherent crying. Cooper pressed himself against her, as close as physically possible, making soft noises in his throat as if trying to soothe her. Mrs. Tremblay sank onto the stairs, her hand over her mouth. shoulders shaking. Mr. Tremblay crossed the room and knelt beside his daughter, wrapping both her and Cooper in his arms. "He's home, ma chérie. He's really home. I looked for him every day." Sophie gasped between sobs, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Every single day I went to the window and waited. I prayed and prayed. I made deals with God. I said I'd never ask for anything else if he just brought Cooper back. And he did. He did." She pulled back slightly, cupping Cooper's face in her small hands, examining him as if memorizing every detail. "You're hurt," she said, noticing his bandaged paw, her voice breaking again. "You're so skinny. What happened to you? Where were you?" Cooper just licked her face again, his tail never stopping. Sophie looked up suddenly, as if remembering there were other people in the room. Her eyes landed on Sarah and Mark. "Did you find him?" she asked, her voice small but clear. "Did you bring him home?" Sarah nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Sophie stood slowly, Cooper pressed against her leg, and walked over to Sarah. She was so small, so fragile-looking, but when she wrapped her arms around Sarah's waist and hugged her, there was strength in it. "Thank you," Sophie whispered. "Thank you for not leaving him. Thank you for seeing him." Sarah's tears fell into Sophie's hair. "You're welcome, sweetheart. I couldn't leave him. He was waiting for you." Sophie pulled back and looked up at her with those serious eyes. "My mum says most people walk past, that they don't want to get involved. Why did you stop?" Sarah glanced at Mark, then back at Sophie. "Because a long time ago, I had a dog like Cooper. His name was Bailey, and he saved me when I needed him most. So when I saw Cooper tonight, I knew someone needed him, and he needed to get back to that someone." "That was me," Sophie said softly. "I needed him." "I know." Sophie turned to Mark. "And you helped too." Mark crouched down to her eye level. "Your dog helped me more than I helped him. He reminded me what's important, and he helped me remember why I fell in love with my wife." Sophie studied him seriously, then nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Dogs do that. They show you who you really are." She looked down at Cooper. "He showed me I was brave. Even when I stopped talking, he never stopped listening." Dr. Beaumont stepped forward, wiping her eyes. "Sophie, I need to check Cooper's bandage before bed, and your parents will need to give him antibiotics twice a day for 10 days. His paw will heal, but he'll need to rest." Sophie nodded solemnly. "I'll take care of him. I'll never let him get lost again." "I know you won't," Dr. Beaumont said gently. An hour later, after Dr. Beaumont had re-examined Cooper, after the Tremblays had made tea and insisted Sarah and Mark stay for a while, after Sophie had fed Cooper small pieces of chicken by hand and told him everything that had happened while he was gone, Sarah and Mark finally prepared to leave. They stood on the porch in the cool night air. The rain had stopped, and the sky was clearing, revealing patches of stars between the clouds. Mrs. Tremblay hugged them both again. "There are no words," she said. "You gave us back our daughter's voice. You gave us back hope. If you ever need anything you call us, please." "We will," Sarah promised. Through the window they could see Sophie curled up on the couch, Cooper's head in her lap. She was talking to him softly, her fingers stroking his ears. Mr. Tremblay sat beside them, his arm around his daughter's shoulders, watching her with an expression of profound relief and gratitude. "She's talking again," Mark said quietly. "Because someone came back for her," Sarah replied. "Someone didn't give up." Dr. Beaumont walked them to their car. "I meant what I said in the hotel. You're remarkable, both of you." "So are you," Sarah said. "You drove 2 hours in a storm for a dog you'd never met." "For a little girl I care about," Dr. Beaumont corrected, "and because I believe some lives are worth disrupting your plans for." She smiled. Safe drive back, and happy anniversary. Sarah and Mark got into their car. As they pulled away from the curb, Sarah looked back one last time. Sophie was at the window now, waving, Cooper beside her with his paw on the sill. Sarah waved back, her heart full. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, heading back toward Vermont. Finally, Mark spoke. "We never had that fancy dinner." "No," Sarah agreed. "We didn't. Want to know something? I don't care." Sarah laughed, the first real laugh she'd had in months. "Me neither. We should probably find a hotel, though. It's almost 2 in the morning. There's a Holiday Inn off the next exit," Sarah said, checking her phone. "Nothing fancy, but it'll do. Perfect." They checked in 40 minutes later, exhausted and still in their rain-dampened clothes. The room was small and generic, with industrial carpet and landscape paintings bolted to the walls. But when Mark wrapped his arms around Sarah and pulled her close, it felt like the most romantic place in the world. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I'm sorry I forgot how to show it." "I love you too," Sarah said, "and we're going to be okay. We just needed a reminder." "A reminder that came in the form of a stray dog in a hotel lobby," Mark said, smiling. "Not a stray," Sarah corrected. "Someone who was lost and trying to find his way home." Mark pulled back to look at her. "Like us?" "Yeah," Sarah said softly. "Like us." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, the curtains open to let in the starlight. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah didn't dream of distance or silence or slowly drifting apart. She dreamed of a little girl's voice, clear and strong, saying thank you for not leaving him. She dreamed of hands clasped together in the rain. She dreamed of the long road home and the courage it takes to choose love, even when, especially when, it's inconvenient. 3 months later, Sarah received a package in the mail. Inside was a framed photo of Sophie and Cooper sitting on their porch, both of them grinning at the camera. Cooper looked healthy and strong, his coat shining, his paw completely healed. Sophie's arms were wrapped around him, and her smile was radiant, the smile of someone who had gotten their world back. Tucked into the frame was a handwritten note in careful, looping script. "Dear Sarah and Mark, Cooper and I wanted to send you this. Mom says you're the reason we're both smiling again. I've been talking more every day. I even made a friend at school. Cooper comes with me sometimes. He's a certified therapy dog now. I wanted you to know that what you did mattered. Not just to me and Cooper, but to everyone we meet. Because now I tell people about you. I tell them that when everyone else walked past, you stopped, and that made all the difference. Thank you for showing me that there are still heroes in the world. They just look like regular people doing something kind." Love, Sophie, and Cooper Sarah hung the photo on their bedroom wall, right where she could see it every morning when she woke up. And every time she looked at it, she remembered the rainy October night when everything changed. When she and Mark learned that love isn't about fancy restaurants or perfect plans. It's about stopping, about seeing, about choosing to care, even when it's hard. It's about the long road home and having the courage to take it together.